They say lightning never strikes the same place twice, but in the world of unsolved crime, it almost feels like it does sometimes. You see patterns emerge, stories echo, and cases seem to mirror one another, as though there's some hidden thread that ties them all together.
And yet, time and time again, investigators find no real connection. The similarities we see are often just eerie coincidences. Tonight, we're exploring some of the most haunting examples where disappearances and murders seem intertwined, but most likely aren't. It's a reminder that our brains are wired to find patterns, but patterns don't always mean truth.
Let's start with two cases. They're often spoke about in the same breath. It's a twin mystery from 2004, Maura Murray and Brianna Maitland. They vanished from two different states just weeks apart.
The first story, it began on a Monday in February of 2004. Maura Murray, a 21-year-old nursing student, she was living in Amherst, Massachusetts. And without telling anyone her plans, she had packed a bag, sent an email to her professors saying she was leaving due to a family emergency that didn't exist, and she drove north into New Hampshire.
Just before 7:30 p.m. on February 9th, her car veered off a rural road in Haverhill, New Hampshire, struck a tree. A passing bus driver stopped to offer help, but when law enforcement arrived, the car was abandoned. The driver was gone.
And you know what, Tim? She had left behind her cell phone, her car keys, and some personal items. The case was immediately bizarre. There were no footprints found in the snow leading away from the car, and to this day, no trace of Maura has ever been found.
It was a shocking mystery, and just a month later, on March 19th, 2004, another young woman went missing too, Brianna Maitland. Just 17 years old, she disappeared after leaving her job in Montgomery, Vermont. That was just a few hundred miles from where Maura's car was found.
Wow. And her car, it was discovered the next day, backed into the side of an abandoned house, almost as if it had been intentionally staged. And the photographs, they are chilling.
Mm-hmm.
You see the front of the car jammed against the side of the building, but no one saw it happen, and no one saw Brianna.
You know, it's easy to see why people would already link them immediately.
It really is.
Two young women, two cars, abandoned in a bizarre fashion in the same region, weeks apart. Man, you remember online forums? They exploded with theories about a single serial predator hunting young women in New England.
I really do. But investigators, they insisted there was no connection. There were different circles of friends, different life situations, different timelines, and to them, there was no physical evidence, no forensics, no suspects that tied these cases together. Still, the coincidences keeps the speculation alive, and two families are still waiting for answers.
It does make you wonder.
It really does.
But you know, speaking of unsettling disappearances, another pair of cases that echo in just about a similar way, the Springfield 3 in Missouri and Jodi Huisentruit in Iowa.
In the summer of '92, in Springfield, Missouri, a terrifying silence fell over a quiet home. There were three women, Cheryl Levette, her daughter, Susie Streeter, and friend Stacy McCall. They vanished in the middle of the night. Their purses, cigarettes, and cars were all left behind. It was as if they had been plucked from their lives in the middle of a mundane evening.
You know, that scene was a snapshot of an interrupted routine. Beds looked slept in, the TV was still on. It was a home where three lives had been put on pause, and nobody knew why. And for years, that mystery just deepened.
And you know what? Just 3 years later in Mason City, Iowa, a similar case of interrupted routine would hang in the air. News anchor Jodi Huisentruit was on her way to work before dawn. When she didn't show up, police checked her apartment building. Her car, it was still in her parking lot, and next to it, her keys were bent in the lot. Her high heels scattered on the ground, and a hairdryer lay nearby.
A violent struggle in the middle of an ordinary morning, much like the Springfield Three. These cases share the same haunting feel of a life paused just mid-sentence. Both
Yeah.
remain unsolved.
But again, different states, different circumstances, and different evidence. There was no overlap in the suspects or forensics, just the haunting echo of young women gone without an explanation. A reminder that the most dangerous place can sometimes be the one you think is the safest.
Amen. For years, the public has a tendency to connect crimes, especially when they share the same region. Two series of murders in Virginia during the late 1980s, well, they became intertwined in the public's mind.
They sure did. The first one was Colonial Parkway murders. They involved couples found murdered along the scenic Virginia Parkway. The scenes, they were brutal and remote, and the crimes became the hallmark of a terrifying unsolved mystery.
And when you know it, just a few miles away, women were disappearing along Route 29. The victims, they were often lone hitchhikers or college students. And for years, the public and even some investigators feared it was one single predator terrorizing the roads of Virginia.
But as investigators looked deeper and new forensics emerged, including recent breakthroughs in DNA technology, they discovered that the predator of the Route 29 killings was likely not the same person as the Colonial Parkway killer. The methods and the victim profiles were just too different. The Parkway victims were couples. The Route 29 victims were single women. They were two separate tragic mysteries happening in the same state at the same time.
I remember, though, that was scary. But it's a powerful lesson in true crime that sometimes the coincidences we see, they're just that, coincidences. That two different monsters can share the same hunting grounds, well, the truth is even more terrifying than we can really imagine.
You cannot. You believe you said that. Our brains are wired to find connections, especially when we're trying to make sense of a tragedy.
Yeah.
The cases of Amy Mahalovic and the so-called smiley face drownings are perfect examples.
In 1989, 10-year-old Amy Mahalovic was lured from a shopping plaza in Bay Village, Ohio. After a chilling phone call, a man on the phone told her he was a friend of her mother's and that he had a surprise for her. Amy was abducted and tragically murdered. Her case still haunts the Midwest, and for a long time, investigators looked for any connection to other child abductions.
But the lure, the specific phone call, and the meeting setup was unique to Amy's case. It set her apart from other tragedies. And then you have the completely separate theory of the smiley face killers.
Yeah, for years, theories have circulated about an alleged group abducting young men from bars and leaving their bodies in rivers, with graffiti smiley faces found nearby. The pattern seemed undeniable. College-aged men, last seen drinking, later found drowned.
But most medical examiners and the FBI have officially dismissed this theory. They believe these are tragic drownings linked to alcohol, not a serial killer. The supposed graffiti evidence was inconsistent and often stretched to fit the theory. And it's a reminder that sometimes The public's desire for a simple answer creates a narrative that doesn't hold up to scrutiny.
But there's always the what if.
Yes, there is.
We've seen how public perception and a lack of evidence that can tie cases together. But sometimes a stunning development can prove that seemingly connected cases are in fact separate cases.
Like in 2006, where 4 young women were found murdered in a drainage ditch in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The cases remain unsolved. Just a few years later, in 2010, the bodies of multiple women were found along Gilgo Beach on Long Island, New York.
The public immediately suspected a single killer spanning the Northeast corridor. Same type of victims, similar methods of disposal. But just this past year, there was a major breakthrough in the Gilgo Beach cases. The suspect was arrested on a massive DNA and cell phone data investigation. The shocking development proved the killer in New York was not connected to the New Jersey case.
It's a statement to the power of forensic science, and it's a chilling reminder that there can be 2 different monsters operating in the same area with the same victimology, but with no connection whatsoever. Wow.
Well, again, still makes you wonder because
It
there's
really,
possibilities the Gilgo guy has reached as far as South Carolina. It still makes you wonder.
it makes me wonder.
So, do you ever wonder why we see these overlaps? Why 2 different tragedies look like the chapters in the same story?
I think part of it is human nature.
Yeah.
Our brains are wired to find patterns, to connect dots. It's how we make sense of the world when things feel out of our control.
And really, part of it is circumstance. A car
Yeah.
is abandoned because a car is often the last place a victim is seen. Joggers vanish because it's an isolated trail and it's risky. These aren't supernatural conspiracies. Well, they're unsettling echoes of a very real, very human darkness.
And each of these victims, Maura, Brianna, Cheryl, Susie, Stacy, Jodi, Amy, Mary Ann, Carol Ann, and all the others, well, they deserve justice on their own terms. Their names are not just part of a pattern. They are individuals with families that are still searching for them, and my heart aches for them.
Yeah, they need answers.
They do.
And while these coincidences may be just that, coincidences, they do remind us of how fragile life
Yes,
can
they
be
do.
and how much work remains in the fight for truth.
And thank you for joining us tonight on the BucklesBerry Lemonade podcast.
Guys, if you found this episode meaningful, we ask just one thing: share it. Share their stories because awareness is the first step toward answers.
Amen. Hey, and if you've made it this far, stay tuned for a bonus story.
The air hung thick and heavy that night, the kind that carries the scent of honeysuckle and something else, something unseen. It was 1991, just outside the sleepy town of Harrington, Delaware, but the darkness, it felt as old as the pines themselves. Charles Holden, a man carrying his own share of heavy burdens, was on his way home, the headlights of his pickup cutting through the inky black night. That's when he saw him, a figure by the side of the road, thumb out, face shadowed by the brim of a worn-out cap. A hitchhiker. Now, a sensible man might keep driving, but Charles, well, maybe the loneliness of the road had gotten to him. He pulled over. The hitchhiker said his name was Gilbert Cannon. Seemed harmless enough at first. But when Charles got closer to his place, he turned off the main drag onto the winding lane that led to his mama's house. He told Cannon he'd have to let him out. And that's when the air in that cab turned cold, like a sudden draft from an open grave. Cannon went wild, like a switch had flipped, and all of a sudden, Charles was fighting for his life against a man he'd only just met, a stranger with a darkness coiled tight inside him. By the grace of something unseen, Charles managed to break free, leaving Cannon by the side of the road, a ragged shadow in the night. He floored it, heart hammering against his ribs, and he didn't stop until he reached his mother, Dorothy, her house. But the quiet of that house was wrong, heavy, like something had settled there that shouldn't have. He found his mama, gone, murdered in her own home. And the finger, heavy and accusing, well, it pointed straight at Charles. Money troubles, a recent insurance policy on his mother, Dorothy, and that story about the hitchhiker. Well, that sounded like a fever dream to the law. I mean, what were the odds? Years crawled by like the moss on a tombstone. The case grew colder than a winter wind. But time has a way of unearthing secrets buried deep. And in 2005, a sliver of the past, a trace of what was, well, it finally spoke. DNA from the crime scene, a whisper in the vast database of CODIS. It found a name. Gilbert Cannon, the hitchhiker. His story, when they finally caught up to him, was a twist of fate. So bizarre, so darkly improbable. It felt like something conjured up. He admitted it. Said after the fight with Charles, he was just looking for a place to lay his head. Passed by houses that looked lived in. Then he saw Dorothy's. Thought it was empty. Broke in, and there she was. He killed her. Claimed he never knew Dorothy. Never knew Charles was her son. A random act of violence. A wrong turn in the dead of night that intersected with another man's nightmare. Gilbert Cannon got his due. A life behind bars. But the chill of that night, the sheer impossible odds of a chance encounter leading a killer to the doorstep of the very family he just crossed, it lingers. A reminder that sometimes the most twisted stories, well, they're the ones that are true. A strange, dark thread woven into the fabric. Testament to the night when a stranger in the dark brought a nightmare to a quiet country road.